And exactly what I said this week on MSNBC when I was asked, Danielle, do you think that Biden can afford to lose Michigan and still pull out a win in 2024? And I said, no. And let me remind you that Hillary Clinton lost Michigan to Trump in 2016. Ask me by how many votes, Waj?
By how many votes?
10,000. Not 100,000, not 20,000, 10,000. So for those people that want to sit around and say, well, Biden won it by 150,000 and 100,000 people just cast their vote as uncommitted, do you think that Biden can afford to lose Michigan and just say, we don't need to worry about it in the way that Hillary Clinton did when she didn't fucking visit? I don't think so. So my humble opinion for people that don't recognize what is at play here and are getting, saying things like, well, then if the Muslim community isn't going to back Biden, then, do they understand how bad things will get under Trump? Let me make something incredibly clear. There is no other communities that know how bad things can possibly be in this country other than Black people and Muslims, okay? And people who intersect with both of those communities. We know exactly how bad things can get because we're always paying the price, right? So the fact that these people, and it's not just Muslims in Michigan, it is the Black church that has taken out ads in the New York Times, that has written several pieces in the New York Times. The AME Church, which boasts membership of 3 million Black people in this country, right? The pastors that represent some, 50 million people. Like, wake up. It isn't just one group, and it's the group that knows the stakes the best. And so if I'm Biden after Michigan last night, I'm thinking to myself, we got to do something here, and we have to do it fast. And it can't just be me talking about fucking genocide while I'm eating ice cream. Because also, Jesus fucking Christ.
Terrible. And this is one of those situations where, according to the administration, they're saying, we're not worried about this. We know those people will come back. But I'm telling you, folks, 100,000 votes, you better believe there's some alarms going off. They're never going to admit it, but there's some alarms going off right now. And it's one of those situations I just want to, because many of our listeners might not engage with Muslim Americans and Arab Americans. They're not stupid. They are very aware of how dangerous Trump is. But I'm in a position right now, Danielle, where when you talk to someone who has lost family members in Gaza, and it seems like the situation will not de-escalate, and their government is funding it and arming it, and Biden's trademark empathy seems to be completely missing, and the administration itself, there's leaks that they've messed up when it comes to outreach. You tell them, hey, what you consider genocide, just vote for Biden. And you better vote for Biden or else. It's not working. And people are making a moral vote to go uncommitted in the presidential race and vote down ballot Democrat. But it's one of those situations where look at Michigan, then look at Minnesota, then look at Wisconsin. Let's see. And it's one of those situations where I just want people to pay attention to it. Don't dismiss it. And the last thing I'll say is it's also a moral issue. Because like you mentioned, Daniel, 30,000 people have been killed, 12,000 children. And it seems like, Netanyahu, according to Thomas Friedman, his post-war plans is just turn Gaza into a meat grinder and then occupy it. If this war keeps going on till the summer, and we're looking at the polls right now, it's a dangerous game that Biden is playing by not using the levers. That's my take.
And I would say this, but before we move on to our next story, is that it is an incredibly dangerous game that Netanyahu is playing for on the world stage. And there is a reason why Israelis continue to protest in mass, because they believe that he is putting their country, their lives, and their future at risk by his extreme actions. And that is coming out of people on the ground in Israel that are in the streets
Family members of the hostages.
Protesting. Family members of the hostages leading the charge.
Yeah.
So you don't have to take it from us, right? But you sure as hell should take it from the people that are living inside of the country under Netanyahu's thumb. So switching gears, I actually want to switch gears into Aaron Bushnell. While we're on the topic of America's involvement in this war.
But it's not even a switch. It's not even a gear switch, if you think about it.
It isn't. And so, Waj, what I will say is that there have been days and there have been weeks over the last several years that require me to lay down, that require me to turn off social media and like literally just let go of it all, because the weight of the grief and the trauma is just too much. This past weekend was one of them. Aaron Bushnell, 25-year-old Air Force active member, went before the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., with a bottle of flammable liquid, had posted on social media that he can no longer be, in his words, quote, complicit in genocide, put his phone down on the ground and live streamed his act of self-immolation. There is a picture of police officers pulling their guns on a man who is engulfed in flames. And someone tweeted and said, I can think of no better image of where and who America is in this moment than that. What got me and what struck me was the fact that when reports were coming out about this, which, by the way, is not the first or the second self-immolation to happen since the beginning of the Israel-Hamas war, there was no mention of the reason why.
Why did he do that? Huh?
It was headline, U.S. Air Force officer lights himself on fire in front of Israeli embassy. ... Waj, make that make sense for us.
I want to actually share his words. This is what he said.
Please.
Right before he did this extreme act of self-immolation. Quote, I am about to engage in an extreme act of protest. But compared to what people have been experiencing in Palestine at the hands of their colonizers, it's not extreme at all. This is what our ruling class has decided will be normal. Free Palestine. And then as he succumbed to his horrific injuries, his last words, yelling, screaming, were free Palestine, free Palestine. As you mentioned, as he was engulfed in flames, there was one security guard who, for whatever reason, had his gun pointed at him. And the other officer, a black man, said, we don't need guns, we need fire hydrants. And what has fascinated me is the double standard at play and the hypocrisy. Like you mentioned, this is not the first act of self-immolation. Mohammed Bouazizi, the Tunisian merchant, if you all remember, did an act of self-immolation in Tunisia, which then lit the flame of the Arab Spring. Valorized, right? Pitied, empathized with him, right? Remember that? Even President Obama praised him. No discussion of mental health crisis. None. When we see the Tibetan monks who have done the same act to protest China's brutality in Tibet, same thing. No one sits there and says, go forth and self-immolate, but they say, oh my God, look at this extreme act of protest, self-immolation, sacrifice. Things are so bad that these people are willing to succumb to fire to bring about attention. None of that happened here. None of that is happening.
None.
And when I bring this up, I said this at the before we started recording, like just all the Islamophobes, hate mongers have come out to disparage him, demean him. He's literally as clear as can be for his motivations. You don't have to agree with it, but he's as clear as it can be. And what did people dismiss him as? suicidal, mental health issues without engaging with the actual reason of why he did it. Why? Because it's about Palestine and what's happening in Gaza. And because they don't want to talk about that inconvenient reality, well, let's call him an anarchist. Let's call him crazy. But we won't do that with Mohamed Bouazizi in the Arab Spring, which we supported. We won't do that with the Vietnamese monk who burned himself on fire, the cover of Rage Against the Machine's first album. We won't do that with Tibetan monks because that's convenient. We like that.
No.
We like it when they protest those things.
And just to be clear, this is the third act that happened in the United States. But we don't know the name won't remember the name of the woman who did it in the South because her name and the act was scrubbed from the internet. This isn't China. And yet somehow there is a media blackout. And this is a thing. And I have to pull it. And I know that we're running short on our time here, but it was a post that someone did. And I said, wow, it is really fascinating that what the United States will do, and now I can't find it, of course, but what the United States will do is if you put on fatigues to go and fight their wars against Black and brown people, you're labeled a hero. If you put on fatigues and give your life to bring attention to the murders, the trauma, and the dehumanization that is happening against Palestinian people, Black and brown people, then you are labeled crazy. And I thought to myself, my God, what clear truth. This is America. That we can just shrug off this act, which I can't imagine his friends, I can't imagine his family, I can't imagine anyone that knows him. But to shrug it off as if it doesn't matter, and for the news to have taken so very long to actually read his words and share the reasoning that he offered, because it was all over social media. So already, by not reporting on it, people are seeing exactly what you're doing. I just, last word to you, Waj, on this, but it was beyond. It was a story that really made me have to go and lay down.